Thank you very much, Rachel. Now, just 25 years ago, there were thousands of indecent images of children in circulation. Today, a database of images of child abuse used by police has 13 million pictures, and it is growing by another million every 4 months. It's been announced that police forces across the UK will have access to new tools, which it's claimed will help the fight against online child abusers. One of the new tools will be able to scan suspects' hard drives, rapidly analysing the images found and comparing them against the database. A search that would have taken 24 hours before will now take 30 minutes. The tools will also be able to grade and sort images before officers have to see them. The first step in police officers being saved the psychological pressure of viewing this kind of material. We can speak now to Andy Burrows, who is the NSPCC's Head of Child Safety Online Policy. Also joining us, Becky Reynolds, a social worker and professional officer for the British Association of Social Workers, and Abhilash Nair, who is a senior lecturer from Aston Law School, specialising in internet law, including the regulation of illegal content. He also recently published a book on the regulation of internet pornography. Thank you all very much for joining us. Andy, those statistics are absolutely mind-blowing, how big the database is now and how quickly it's growing. Where are all these images coming from?
Well, we know that potentially hundreds of thousands of people in the UK have accessed child abuse images. And last year we saw 24,000 offences. That's the equivalent of one every 20 minutes across the country. So there's a constant effort to try and identify child abuse images once they've been posted online and then they are put into a database. But we also know that many images will come when the police go and seize a suspect's device. And very often they will seize the device, they will open that up, and then that really opens up a Pandora's box where hundreds, thousands, potentially tens of thousands of images might be stored.
How transformative potentially then do you think this new technology is in assessing these images?
So this is an important part of what has to be a much wider solution. As you were saying, the ability to triage images, you know, suspects may have many thousands of images on their phones. So to be able to scan them, to scan a hard drive quickly is important.
And to prioritise which ones.
And to prioritise. Yeah. So to be able to really quickly identify whether we're talking about the most severe types of child abuse imagery, and also then to help to try and thread together investigations, because unfortunately we know children very often will be talking about hundreds or thousands of photographs that will have been taken of them, perhaps at different times, in different locations. So this technology will help to thread together what can be really quite complex investigations.
And can that even be done at the moment? Because if it's down to individuals, how much can they cross-reference?
Well, at present, with the scale of cases that police are having to deal with the fact that a lot of this has to be done manually, that is a long, slow process. So what's important about today is that technology will speed this up. It will help police to be more on the front foot in investigations, and it will ensure that, most importantly, children can be safeguarded. So children who have been victims of abuse can be identified and then can get the help and support that they need.
Becky, when we're talking about images on such a large scale, you know, obviously each of those children that is in the images, you know, that is an individual tragedy. Tell us about the work that you do and obviously without being specific, but the sort of typical encounters that you would have with a child who has been subject to this and what the impact is on the family.
Obviously, social workers work very closely with the police when we're made aware of images. So this technology will speed up that process and hopefully identify children quicker, which means they can be safeguarded at a faster pace.
So So once a child is identified, then is it social workers that go in to the family? How does it work?
It would be social workers and the police. Other professionals would be involved, so it's really a multi-agency approach, a team of professionals around a child. I think what's really important is we need to think about the child who is on the images, the child who's been abused, but there may be other children. So the person taking the images or viewing the images, they may have children who, as social workers, we need to support as well.
And so time is of the essence in getting to these kids to try to prevent further abuse from happening?
Absolutely. As soon as information came through to Children's Services from the police, there would be something called a strategy discussion, which plans how, as a multi-agency, we can safeguard a child as quickly as possible.
And Andy, how often is it happening that kids are actually being identified and people like Becky are going into the families along with police and following up as a result of what they've identified?
Well, children's services across the UK are doing an incredible job, but to really emphasise the scale of the problem here, because we know that police and children's services really are facing an unprecedented number of referrals because of the way in which the scale and the extent of this problem, particularly the fact that images can be viewed, can be shared, can be distributed online. It really means that with the way in which the internet affords offenders new opportunities to access and also create this material, then this is a problem which is really intensified in terms of its severity.
Abhilash, we're talking obviously about this new technology which can be transformative. The Home Secretary saying it is a game changer. Do you have any concerns about the fallibility of that technology?
Well, more than concerns, I'm actually quite supportive of the use of technology in trying to identify victims as well as perpetrators of child abuse imagery. As Andy mentioned there, the scale of the problem, the volume of images that are on the internet, makes it really next to impossible for the police to manually sift through each and every single image. Part of the problem is a lot of the images are duplicates of existing images. There's a lot of time wasted going through 10,000 images, of which 85% typically will be known images that have already been identified and the child rescued. So the energy has to be really focused on identifying newer images so that new children, hitherto unknown children who are abused, can be rescued. But you asked me the question about concerns. Technology, we need to be aware that technology is not foolproof. So, it's quite easy to get complacent about the whole thing and leaving everything to technology. As technology currently stands, a level of human intervention will still be required. For example, the algorithm can categorize images according to its severity, but when it comes to prosecution, when a decision has to be made, when it comes to prosecution, it has to involve a police officer actually verifying the image and making decisions as to prosecution.
In terms of knocks on the door arising from this material being collated, would you expect that to increase as a result of this technology, and how quickly images will be able to be sifted and cross-referenced?
But certainly, because child abuse imagery is a global problem, and we are only talking about the UK here. The technology will enable different police forces in this country to collaborate and then better coordinate efforts to rescue children. But bear in mind that only less than 1% of all child abuse imagery are hosted in the UK, and the rest of them are actually hosted in other servers internationally. So similar initiatives exist elsewhere as well. For example, the Interpol has a child abuse image database, which law enforcement officers across different jurisdictions use, and it is the best way to sort of identify children who are based in other jurisdictions. One of the things to bear in mind, going back to the original question regarding concerns, is that, and this is a broader question we all need to think about, is the impact of these databases on the victims itself. Because there is one school of thought which kind of argues that victims can still be affected by the knowledge that the images can be seen by somebody, even though those people who are actually viewing those images are police officers for legitimate reasons. So I think we need to continue innovating to make sure that going forward, technology grows to a point that these images can be stored in a non-visual format going forward. But that's something for the future as technology develops.
Thank you all very much for joining us. Thank you. Still to come, we are celebrating some really epic sport this morning. England's men's cricketers are heading into their first World Cup final for 27 years. And it's every parent's worst nightmare. We talked to the parents of 3-year-old Sam Tuckett. He disappeared down a 20-foot hole during a family walk in the Peak District. Sam suffered a serious head injury, but survived and is now doing well. We'll be talking to the family. The BBC's technology correspondent Rory Kethlen-Jones has been having treatment for a melanoma in his eye. He's received proton beam therapy